Can you hear me? Hello? Ooh, okay. Good morning, millionaire, and welcome to the Julie Show. Good morning, millionaire, and welcome to the Julie Show, the show where your soul is encouraged to glow and to grow in healthiness, wealthiness, and happiness. And today, good morning. Here's our sunrise in Vancouver, BC. Just getting up so early. Sunrise is about a few minutes before 8 a.m. right now. And today I'm going to give you 12 tips on how to deal with criticism. And I'm going to be taking some of these items are coming from the Fire Starter Sessions by Danielle Laporte, who is a local author here from Vancouver, BC. Oh my goodness. Okay, so think back to the last time you felt unjustly criticized. Was it hard to handle? Well, did your blood boil? Did you clench your fist? Did you shout, grunt, growl? Did you react or did you smile very awkwardly? Did you feel like I'm going to hide away for many days now and never come out of my shell? Is it uncomfortable for you? The last time you can think of, is there a story somewhere there? Actually, I can think of one just last night. And I did really well with it last night. I actually backed up and said, whoa, this is not the person that I need to be vulnerable in front of, because it was unjust criticism. It was destructive. And it was that person thinks a certain way. And so I backed up, and rather than getting involved in the argument or trying to prove myself, which I often want to do because I can't believe people are so critical, I did really well. So give yourself a moment and just think back, when's the last time I experienced criticism, whether it was constructive or just or unjust? When's the last time you experienced somebody giving you criticism? You got one? Okay, just hold that concept right there, because there must be one within the last day or so or week or so, unless you like hide away in your house, and you probably hide away in your house because of criticism. Oh, interesting, right? So criticism is a huge topic that we need to deal with in our emotions and in our mind, because it can stunt us. It can stunt us from being social. It can stunt us from glowing and growing in the world. It can stunt us emotionally, especially because it hurts to be criticized. And if we don't know how to handle criticism, even if it's constructive, we shut down, or we distort ourselves, or we become very, rambunctiously rebellious in a way that's actually destructive to ourselves, and out to prove something all the time and out to fight everybody. So now think back. You've got the most recent one. Now think back when you ever first experienced criticism. Like, I mean, when you're still toddler age, did you ever feel like, whoa, I'm being told what I'm doing is wrong, even if it was just based on someone's opinion, perhaps? When you think back and you're like, was I doing something really wrong? Or was I just doing what a child does? Like, think back to your earliest sense of criticism, or maybe you can't remember that far back, but see how far back you can remember. Is there a moment when you're like, whoa, did I ever get the glare even of criticism of I had one too many cookies, or like, think of something, some sort of issue. I can think of the first time I felt like disapproved of, and I was very young. Can you think of something back then? I'll tell you something. Mine was actually when I was 3 or 4, and I was adopted. Okay, so but we had very close family. Adopted family was great. My uncles, for some reason, didn't. When it boiled down to it, it was all about blood for them, and so it was the 70s. So people are certain limitations in some ways in the 70s. Well, some people weren't in limitations. But what happened is I ran to be in a picture with my grandparents. Yay, all the cousins are getting in, all my cousins are getting in into this photo. We all had white blonde hair. We all looked related, even though I only had a little bit of German and they had a lot of German. I was definitely mixed blood, but it didn't stand out that way. Physically, I didn't look any different. And I'm 3 or 4, right? I got yelled at to be out of the picture by one of my uncles, like, scolded almost, and pulled away from my grandma, who was like, yeah, come in the picture, right? And I cried in the corner. My mom did not notice this moment. I was crying. I remember crying over in the corner by the record player, like by those big stereos we had, right? Big stereo speakers. And I was crying to myself in the corner. My cousins pretty much moved on and felt very special that they were in the photo. But I heard it out loud. She's not blood. And it's like a muggle thing, right? I didn't even know. I knew I was adopted, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together. What did that mean? And that stuck in my head for the longest time. She's not blood. And I'd been there since I was a baby. So I practically was treated as if I was blood all that time. So to me, that was for sure this cruel, and no one's rescued me from that. I think maybe I explained it later to my mom, but she didn't understand. It just sounded like I was crying. But I never forgot that moment. And I even saw my grandma brought me back into a photo that my mom took with just me and grandma. Okay. So my mom cared. And yet, isn't that weird? Isn't that the weirdest thing? And I remember I look at that picture and I go, wow, what a weird moment. And that was my first memory experience of criticism. So just think of this. This is really key. Because did I curl up and cry and did that traumatize me and really stick in my mind? I was really young. We're going to reflect on how we give criticism and whether it's necessary or when it's needed or helpful, and how to be constructive and actually compassionate about it. How to, let go of being condemning, and that when we deliver criticism, is it authentic? Is it helpful? Or is it just hurtful, right? Are we just being condemning and hurting people? And are we just giving criticism where it's not needed? So these are hot tips, because can't criticism just throw you off, even if you're feeling it a little bit and you overreact and shut the door for a few days and you just can't handle the world because it's so critical? This is really helpful, these tips that I'm going to go over. So the fear of being criticized even alone, right? We were talking about that before. I was reading out of Danielle's book, is even the fear of it can keep us locked up, shut down, and feel like the world doesn't love us, when that's not the truth. Criticism is a cruel cat and can be constructive, but on the whole, my experience is that it's very destructive and based on someone's judgment, not necessarily on whether you're doing what is needed. Like, for instance, and this is my last story before we get into the hot tips. I was at an event, a beautiful, amazing event. Any event can be incredible. But guess what? Guess what took away from that event? A lot of people bossing me around. I had 7, albeit great people, but 7 different people playing leader role when I really only ought to have 1 at a time, right? So I'm open. I'm like, okay, I'll follow this leader saying this to me. Okay, I'm going to do it like that. I'm doing it like that. I'm doing it like that. Another leader comes, what are you doing? That's not right. What are you doing? Like, oh, I'm just following the leader. But the leader kept trumping the other leader and not really even communicating amongst themselves. And I could not, can you please 7 people at once? It's practically impossible, especially when they've got a lot of, I have authority here, like a lot of ego going on, right? Attempting to be humble, I'm attempting to pull off an event and serve 250 people. And this is not me complaining. This is me explaining how if you have too many people trying to dominate your world and trying to tell you how it's done, even though it's like the tiniest details that really doesn't matter, like just sort of bossing their authority around. Or like, for instance, I just got out of a meeting with one of the leaders and I get doing it the way they tell me to do it. And then I'm saying to another leader, oh, we just got told don't use it like that. Well, you heard wrong. And you almost lose your mind. So, for instance, you don't want to burn your bridges with great leaders, even if there's a lot of ego involved. You don't want to be doing that because you have a purpose, and your purpose is not to be causing a ruckus or burning bridges. That's not helpful. It really took away from the beauty of the event, right? It's your own process when you end up being in a responsible position and people start critiquing you and criticizing you and bossing you around just for the own sake of their ego, right? Not necessarily on functioning of an event. Really, I shouldn't have had 3 people being my leader and constantly contradicting themselves, like not noticing how they're contradicting themselves, right? They were not all functioning on the same rules. And I was even taught other rules at a previous event. And so I was applying those all the time because it's the same company, so I'm taught a certain way, right? That is difficult, right? And this is your professional world, or maybe your personal world, or your volunteer world, and you're like, no, I have a purpose here. There's a beauty in this program or in this business, and conflict can happen anywhere, and people who aren't even supposed to be critiquing you or criticizing you or condemning you or judging you or trying to dominate you, right? How do you hold yourself together? How do you move through those moments so it's not so awkward and so it's not distracting you and your purpose? Because you know what? A lot of people end up flaring up, blowing up, understandably, walking away, shutting down, and never to return. Never to return, right? So if you're ready to take the next step, and if you can relate to what I'm saying of how important it is, and maybe even if you are used to being the one who's bossing around and being criticizing or has a position of authority and is a leader, how do you deliver criticism in a constructive and compassionate way, right? Because even if it's just criticism, can you deliver it from a place of compassion so it's not hurtful? And someone may react even then because it's based on some pain they have. How can you communicate and help them not to react? And that's the thing. We want to be good leaders when we're leaders, right? And effective, and not just hurting people just because we feel it's just to criticize or condemn them. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Why would you need to condemn someone, right? So how do we handle these awkward moments when we are receiving unjust criticism, constructive criticism? You see it even in someone's face sometimes. And there's a way to do it that you're humble and you're able to accept the command, so to speak. So if you're aboard a ship and the captain says, pull in the whatevers, pull in the oars, and you're like, oh, better pull in the oars. Even if you think, oh crap, you might be wrong, well, someone has to guide and oversee and objectively look at the situation. You have to trust. They've done this many years. They know what they're doing. You have to trust and pull in the oars. And even if they're like, oh crap, put the oars back in, you got to keep following the leader to help something function. So ruthless compassion can be very effective. And we got to learn how to accept criticism. So here are the hot tips. Ready? I'm sure you can see what I'm saying and how important it is to know these hot tips. So the first one, tip number 1, is breathe. You got that? Just breathe. Being criticized, and upon being criticized, your lizard brain wants you to clench your fists and start growling. I have in the past tended to do. Not only would that be very unattractive, maybe, but you also can't think clearly when your energy is all clamped up and snarly. It's counter to primal instincts, but you need to take a deep, softening breath so that the pain has room to move through and out of you. And so you get some oxygen to your head. You sustain less injury when you do not brace for impact. That's why they call it rolling with the punches. Number two hot tip regarding being criticized. Admit that criticism stings. Ow. Eesh. And that's hard to hear, but I'm up for it. Honesty when criticized is a great equalizer and a show of maturity. Even if you have to fake it and then go bawl your eyes out in the car. Don't react immediately. Tip number 3, don't react immediately. Sometimes it's best to just listen and reservedly say, I've heard you. Let me process what you've said. I'll get back to you tomorrow. Many of us are so adrift from our deep sensitivity that it takes some time to clearly know how we feel. So just take the time. It's better than giving a half-cocked reaction that you'll regret. But if you do say something you regret or you don't say what you think you should have, tip number 4, go back to it. Feel free to bring it up again, even if it was a closed subject. I thought more about what you said, and I just wanted to let you know that you're really an asshole. Just kidding. The point is that it's better to clear the air after the fact than it is to bury your feelings. Tip number 5, be compassionate with your criticizer. This calls for some Buddha level enlightenment and some old-fashioned objectivity. Try to appreciate the position that the other person is in. Giving honest criticism is no fun for most people. And it's often a case of, this is going to hurt me as much as it might hurt you. There's a decent chance that your critic fretted over how best to deliver the feedback to you. Number 6, consider the source. As Ralph Waldo Emerson put it, to succeed is to earn the appreciation of honest critics. So first, you need to consider your source and their motivation. If you feel you're being inaccurately criticized, then you need to say so in no uncertain terms. To say that this is inaccurate. This is tricky because you may be perceived as being defensive. In that case, it's good to collect your thoughts, give a rebuttal that honors your strengths. I've given freely. I've lifted spirits. I've brought in new business, and describes the challenges of the situation. You've needed a lot of support. Morale has been low this season. I've been operating on a shoestring budget. Number 7, accept that criticism creates conflict. Just accept it. Whether it's surmounted in minutes, sincerely welcomed, or takes months to overcome criticism. Criticism is confrontational and it often creates friction. Oprah's favorite coach, Martha Beck, dispels any illusions about sugarcoating it. She says, the nature of conflict means can't set a boundary and take care of someone else's feelings at the same time. Standing up for yourself means you're not carrying the other person at that moment. You will naturally push against criticism. That is part of examining and assessing it, valuing or rejecting it. Pushing back may get very uncomfortable. Don't expect it to be otherwise. And what we're at, number 8. Yes, tip number 8. Don't take any shit. Sometimes you have to play hardball. Hardball. I once got a super crappy performance review from a manager at a retail job. I got on the phone right away and called the big cheese. There's no way I'm signing this review, and there's no way I'm quitting. I think she's losing her marbles. My heart was racing when I dialed the phone, but I knew I had to do it. As it turned out, I wasn't the only person complaining about the manager gone mad. She left shortly thereafter, and guess who got promoted? Number 9. Tip number 9. I'm being criticized. Know your rights. Sometimes there are legalities to consider. Your job may be on the line. If you lip off and it leads to a dismissal, you'll want to know what your legal and moral rights are. Employers may need to formally warn you in writing and so forth. You also have the right to be treated with respect no matter how severely you screw up. Criticism given without care is just irresponsible and nasty. Criticism delivered with sensitivity and kindness goes a long way. Number 10, bring closure to it. If you're being asked to improve in some way, then ask for specific, measurable examples. You can't run a race if you don't know where the finish line is. Number 11, say thank you. Thank you. Whether you've been rightly or wrongly critiqued, say thanks. Thanks. Thanks for letting me know. Thanks for bringing it up. Thanks for communicating. Whether you agree or not, it's a learning opportunity and you can muster some gratitude for that. And number 12, be gentle with yourself. Put an ice pack on your ego and order in some comfort food. Give yourself a few minutes or the duration of a cappuccino to mope. Have a little pity party. Tomorrow's another day and you're going to be ready for it. Nothing like snuggles to fix some painful criticism. All right, so I hope those hot tips help you in your life, because actually criticism can be anywhere you go in life, even if it's said without words and just thoughts. Especially if you're very unique and creative, such as I, someone who ends up being too transparent in very vulnerable situations, someone who likes being who they are. Yeah. And yet, and also is like, I honestly really like people even when they're very different than me. And so that's why I tend to be very transparent. And I just want to be friends and family. And my heart is so open towards people. And then, people want to control or criticize and stuff like that easily. It's just something ingrained into the society. So those are hopefully really great hot tips. And also that it'll help you recognize when someone's actually genuinely giving you criticism that's very helpful, because some criticism, whether it's delivered rudely or not, is very, very helpful. Actually can sharpen your skill set. So those are very interesting things. And I just want to take you out to see if our camera, this is my first time using my cell phone to hold the live hangout. So I'm going to see if our Wi-Fi lasts to the roof and give you a view of the city this morning. So I'll just head up up into the heavens above. Here we go. It's been a very creative full moon. My daughters are in and of the fashion world, and they were doing a photo shoot. So they're up most of the night preparing with all their stylists and makeup artists. So it was a fun night. And oh man, here is the view. You see that? All the way over there at English Bay. There's the bridge into the downtown core. There's our beautiful mountains here. And you can see we really don't have a lot of maple trees, which are the ones that give such bright, colorful leaves, but we do have some that turn colors. Here in there's our stadium over there. There's the downtown core, and there's the sunrise comes up over on this side. It'll come up over these buildings here soon. But the moon was up there all last night. And then we have our beautiful cedar tree out front. It is a little bit chilly, but not too bad. Right, boo-boo? Not too bad at all. Pretty sunny considering it's a lot of dew up here. It didn't actually rain. But that's October for you in Vancouver. Tends to be way rainy here. So amazing that we have blue skies. Have a great day, guys. I hope my hot tips help your life. And go out there and don't be afraid to millionize your life.